After tonight's SmackDown aired, JUSO was not there for the dark match. This particular edition of the Blue brand concluded with the Bloodline viciously beating Jimmy USO and Roman Reigns. His answer was, to put it mildly, intriguing. Upon his return to SmackDown, Jimmy USO hinted about reintroducing his brother to the company. When asked whether JUSO will be returning to his side, Roman Reigns simply said, "No ye." But Jimmy is certain that assistance is required, and their brutal defeat at the hands of the Bloodline at the conclusion of tonight's SmackDown proved him right. Since JUSO was probably backstage when his brother and cousin were abused, his response was somewhat out of character. His lack of concern about the Bloodline was on full display in his lack of preparation for his dark match, which he went on to win. It should be noted that from a plot standpoint, Jay wasn't present that evening. It seems as if he may be about to rejoin his family and fight with his cousin and sibling against the new Bloodline at Survivor Series War Games. At the moment, this is just conjecture. The reality that Jimmy USO is eager to enlist assistance is, however, not guesswork. Aside from his feud with Kevin Owens, Cody Rhodes has a major bout against Gunther scheduled for a few weeks from now. There aren't many tales in professional wrestling that have captivated audiences like the Bloodline, which centers on the complicated relationships of a family. The strong Wwe family has long controlled WWE SmackDown. Roman Reigns, in his role as the unbeatable tribal chief, has been supported by his cousins Jimmy and JUSO. When they banded together, they terrorized their enemies and proved to be an unstoppable force. The Bloodline seems to be collapsing in ways nobody could have predicted, as is typical with great empires doomed by internal struggle. Witnessing the terrible defeat of his brother Jimmy USO and the formerly unstoppable head of the family, Roman Reigns, by their own group was a jaw-dropping turn in the newest chapter of this epic family tale. The honest, emotional reaction that Jay had, a reaction that left fans buzzing with joy, perplexity, and heartbreak, only added to the explosiveness of the event. One must be familiar with the events transpiring before to the betrayal in order to fully grasp JUSO's irrational response. Throughout WWE history, the Bloodline has stood tall as the most powerful group. Under Roman Reigns' leadership, the Universal Championship was held in an iron grasp for more than 1,000 days. His cousins, the USOs, served as his devoted foot troops, obeying his every command even when it cost them dearly. His authority was absolute. However, weaknesses within the Bloodline started to show themselves throughout the previous several months. The deceptive leadership style of Roman became especially tiresome for JUSO. It became apparent that the family's devotion was conditional, based on fear rather than mutual respect, as Roman's tyranny escalated. After Roman repeatedly belittled Jay and used his love for family as a tool to manipulate him, tensions between the two eventually burst. Finally, there came Jimmy USO. Jimmy, in contrast to Jay, who had doubts about being faithful to Roman, had always been more rebellious. Even if it risked causing a rift in the family, Jimmy was less receptive to Roman's demands after seeing through his machinations early on. But Jimmy was pushed to the outside of the Bloodline's inner circle as a result of his open defiance. It was stunning and brutal, but no one could have foreseen that the same group they had united would turn on Roman and Jimmy. Roman Reigns, flanked by his family and subordinates, gave a self-assured, borderline ostentatious statement about his rule over WWE, as is customary for most nights. However, a distinct impression emerged. There was an air of tension in the room as the spectators could feel a storm developing inside the Bloodline. After being uncontested for an extended period, Roman supremacy was beginning to erode from within. After then, the unimaginable happened. Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso were about to make their supremacy known in the ring when Solo Sikoa, an enforcer for the Bloodline and another Wwe family member, betrayed them. As a shocking act of treachery, Solo unexpectedly unleashed a powerful Samoan spike, sending the tribal chief tumbling to the mat. Incredulity erupted from the audience. Even the unbeatable tribal chief Roman Reigns had been set up by one of his own. The mayhem, however, did not cease at that point. As a result of his extended resistance to Roman's machinations, Jimmy Uso was the next target of Solo's fury. As if it weren't bad enough, the newest enforcers from the Bloodline also brutally attacked Jimmy, the rebellious sibling. Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso, who had previously led WWE's most powerful group, were reduced to laying shattered in the ring, victims of their own making, in what was a sight of sheer devastation. The camera then panned to Jey Uso, who had been standing backstage and seeing the whole thing, creating an iconic moment. His passionate outburst was among the most unedited and primal that WWE has ever seen. As if he couldn't believe his sight, Jey's hands went to cover his mouth in an instinctual gesture of horror. He felt as if time had stopped moving. Beating and lifeless in the ring lay his identical brother, with whom he had spent his whole life. Their cousin and head of the family was also devastated, and he was standing next to him. The scene was striking, but it was devastating for Jey. Despite the risk to his own safety, he had battled valiantly to defend his loved ones. He had put up with mental manipulation, physical abuse, and the continual weight of being in Roman's shadow so that the family might remain unified. And now, what he had battled for was disintegrating right in front of him. Upon coming to the understanding, Jey's initial disbelief swiftly transformed into rage. He couldn't control the emotional deluge that was consuming him, so he paced wildly and his body stiffened up. Anger, shock, and agony all appeared on his face. He shrieked incoherently, his words drowned out by the tempest of his emotions, causing the veins in his neck to protrude. Both Jey's unwavering devotion to his family and his crushing feeling of betrayal were at his core at that same time. The one who had always sought to maintain harmony within the bloodline, he suddenly found himself witnessing the disintegration of the same family he had loved. His expression betrayed the inner turmoil he was experiencing. Is it in his best interest to accompany his cousin and brother to the ring? On the other hand, he should let them suffer for what they did, knowing that they contributed to the poisonous system that brought them here. An intense reminder of the personal stakes in the bloodline was Jey Uso's irrational response to seeing Jimmy and Roman's defeat at the hands of their own group. This is a family drama on a Shakespearean scale, not just a wrestling plot. Years of animosity, manipulation, and unsolved strife culminated in the treachery that Jey saw.